Three, two, one. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this evening. We're going to be talking about our scalp and itchiness and flakiness and dandruff. Information comes from Dr. Jockers in his article on dandruff, the root causes and support strategies. If you have any questions, you can feel free to text Dr. Udani at 437-702-2112. I wanted to welcome Dr. Udani with us here this evening. She is our naturopathic doctor here at Justine Blaney Wellness Center, and she really is super passionate about skin conditions, including our scalps. She has many other areas that she's passionate about: digestion, stress, and I think it really is important that we understand that it's all tied together. There's a lot of interconnectedness in our bodies. She believes that you can always make changes, that we have the ability to make healthy, long-lasting changes to our health and improve ourselves. Please help me welcome Dr. Udani.
Thank you so much, Angela. Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's doing amazing. So I want to, before we dive in, we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming webinar. So we are having something on skin rashes. So a talk on skin rashes, which can affect more than just your skin. So this is a topic that I was really passionate about. So please tune in for that. And of course, one's on what is whiplash with Dr. Justine. And there's also going to be talks on how to manage our draining our energy, how to stop that, and what are some of the daily decisions that could be increasing it. And we're also having Dine with Doc event, and also about how to live our life with less stress. So these are some of the amazing events that are coming up that we hope you stay tuned for. So let's dive deep into this. An itchy scalp, can be very annoying and can be a little bit embarrassing too, and can be a sign of something deeper that's going on. So of course, if you have itchy scalp, you're going to see skin, like a lot of flaking, and it could be on your shoulders. It could show, on the scalp itself, and can just be a little bit of a embarrassing situation. So what is dandruff? And we're going to talk about the 4 different types of it, some of the conditions that cause it, and of course, some of the ways that we can naturally heal our scalp. And I always want to start this off with saying that our skin, our hair, our nails can be a reflection of what's going on the inside. It's a mirror of what is happening on the inside. So if you have been experiencing dandruff for a very long time and you're wondering what is going on, this can be a sign of an underlying imbalance. So let's dive into dandruff. So there could be 4 different types. First is the dry skin dandruff. This is the small white flakes. The scalp is dry, it's itchy, and it's just lacking moisture. Then there could be fungal related dandruff, which is, which our scalp has natural fungus that is living there. But sometimes there could be an overgrowth of this fungi and can trigger inflammation that can lead to dandruff, the skin flaking off too much. There's oily skin dandruff, which is when your scalp is producing way too much oil and it's building up on the skin. The skin is flaking and can be a lot more yellow in color and a little bit more discolored. Yeah. And then there could also be disease-related dandruff, things like autoimmune inflammatory conditions like psoriasis, seborrheic dermatitis, eczema can cause dandruff too. And this can be a little bit more serious, and you want to make sure what is going on inside that is causing and that's triggering and that's flaring up these conditions to make sure that it's calmed down. So let's talk a little bit about one of those conditions, which is seborrheic dermatitis. So from the name, it sounds really complicated. And what it really means is your skin is irritated and it's producing a lot of oil. And the oil is adding into the inflammation. So it can mainly affect your scalp and it can cause scaly patches, red skin, and just stubborn dandruff. And it's, lots of oil is one of the key signs of this. And what it can do is the oil feeds the fungi, the yeast that lives on the scalp, and it basically trickles down into this big inflammatory process. So how do we differentiate the seborrheic dermatitis with dry skin? So like I said before, seborrheic dermatitis, you're going to notice more oil. Okay, it's an oilier appearance, and it is also looks a little bit bigger flakes of skin, bigger dandruff. Like there could be a little bit more redness, more irritation compared to just regular dry skin and dandruff with dry skin. So that's one of the biggest thing is if you're noticing that there is itchy scalp, oiliness, red and scaly skin, and your skin's not necessarily dry, it's more likely to be seborrheic dermatitis. So this is more of a very scientific slide. So I want to just very, very easily boil it down to the simple things, which is that the seborrheic dermatitis is a inflammatory condition. So there is an immune response, and there is a lot of things going on beneath the surface that is ramping up oil production, that's ramping up the growth of the fungus, that's ramping up the skin cells turnover, and that's basically all of it is lumping up into this big huge flakes of skin flakiness, dandruff, that's just kind of causing a lot of irritation, okay, in the scalp. So this with seborrheic dermatitis, it's an inflammatory condition, and this is where we want to make sure that we figure out what's really causing this inflammation that is triggering this issue. So here are some risk factors for developing that flaky skin, the dandruff, the annoying, itchy scalp. So yes, being a male can increase the risk factors because, as males, they have more testosterone, bigger oil glands in the body, and they can produce more oil. Young or middle-aged adults is another risk factor. Oily scalp or hair, just when let's say you take a shower and by the end of the day you feel it's oily. That's another risk factor, of course, because the oil acts as food for the yeast that lives on the skin, the scalp naturally. Family history of skin conditions like psoriasis or eczema. So there is a genetic component. Dealing with chronic stress, because stress can actually increase and ramp up your oil production. So, it's like too much stress, too much oil production, perfect condition for dandruff and things like seborrheic dermatitis. Being overweight or obese, there's a lot of inflammatory issues when you are overweight or obese. So that is another risk factor for developing dandruff. Having a suppressed immune system. So let's say you are taking medications that calm down your immune system. So, I've had patients who had Crohn's or ulcerative colitis or a lot of IBS symptoms that are on immune suppressing medications that kind of, weakens your immune system. So what that does is fungi, yeast, bacteria that live on the skin can take advantage of that and can just start to multiply and grow and cause inflammation. Another one is sensitivity to chemicals in shampoos. So sometimes shampoos can be more drying and just more triggering a drier scalp, which can cause dandruff. So what's the healthy dynamic of a scalp microbiome? So, I'm sure you are familiar with what microbiome is. So I'll explain to you a little bit. Microbiome is, think of it like the rainforest. Okay, so there's lots of different trees, animals, plants, vines, roots, everything in that rainforest. There's a lot of diversity. So just like that, our skin has a rainforest of bacteria, good bacteria for the most part, but some of them could be opportunistic, so which means they are good for the most part, but in the right conditions, they can become bad guys. There's obviously viruses, there's yeast, there's parasites, there's little mites that are growing on the skin that are helping the skin for the most part. But given some things like inflammation, stress, our eating habits or our lifestyle, this can imbalance the skin and microbiome and reduce that diversity in the microbiome, which can cause overgrowth of dandruff, causing yeast and things like that can really drive it towards inflammation. So it's really a balancing scale where it's always dynamic. There's going to be some days where it's a little bit more the good, sometimes it's going to be more the bad, but it gets so affected by our lifestyle. And so let's talk about chronic dandruff, and unless you have been dealing with this for so many years or so many months, and it's becoming a bit of a problem. So one of the root causes is fungal overgrowth. Like I mentioned, if you have too much of the fungi that is, producing inflammation, you are likely to get some chronic dandruff. Leaky gut, having the autoimmune conditions, inflammatory diet, genetic disposition is another one. Low stomach acid levels. You might be like, how does low stomach acid relate to dandruff? So I will explain it a little bit deeper in the next slides. Food sensitivities, histamine intolerance is another big one. Zinc and omega fatty acid deficiency. So checking for vitamin deficiency is something that I do in my practice. So this is something, if you are curious about what's going on in your body, we can do testing to figure out what's happening. And of course, vitamin D deficiency can be causing chronic dandruff too. Okay, so let's talk about the root cause. One of the root causes, which is genetics. So I always say genetics load the gun, but lifestyle factors is what pulls the trigger. So just because you have a genetic disposition, or you're more likely to, let's say because your parents had it, your grandparents had it, doesn't necessarily mean you will develop it, as long as we take preventative measures to help reduce the likelihood of whatever these conditions. So sometimes that's why I want to give you some words of encouragement, like just because you may have a genetic composition, because you think, oh, my dad had diabetes, so I'm going to have diabetes, or my mother had arthritis, or I'm going to develop arthritis. That doesn't necessarily mean it will happen for sure if we take care of it through lifestyle factors. And then we're going to talk about, of course, root cause factor 2, which is an inflammatory diet, because inflammation is what is driving this dandruff. And we want to avoid foods that are very highly processed with lots of fillers, that don't have a lot of nutrients, that are high in trans fats, hydrogenated fats, the additives, the food dyes, the conventionally raised meats and dairy, farm raised fish is another one. Gluten, for a lot of people have gluten sensitivities. So with these, what we want to do is reducing the inflammation. We're reducing foods that add inflammation and increasing the foods that reduce inflammation. Okay, so inflammatory diet is a big root cause of many issues, including dandruff. And another root cause is leaky gut. So for me to explain leaky gut to you, imagine you have the big tube, right? The food tube that is open from the mouth all the way to your rectum is one giant tube. And so inside the tube, it's lined with cells that help absorb nutrients, right, from the food that we digest. So this layer of cells that line this tube is very, very gentle, very fragile. It can't handle a lot of stress. It's only one cell layer thick. So comparing that to our skin is 7 cell layers thick, okay? So you can imagine, that's like comparing cardboard to tissue paper is one of my favorite analogies, because the lining in our gut is like tissue paper. It can be very easily damaged. So what happens when you have an inflammatory diet, if you have overgrowth of bad gut bacteria, is that this lining gets damaged and you can get something called leaky gut, where lots of food particles are coming through, inflammatory products from bacteria are passing through into the blood, and your immune system is just on high alert. Immune system's just wondering what's going on here. We need to attack. That's causing more inflammation. So, and that can over time lead to things like IBS, things like Crohn's disease, arthritis, lupus, like a lot of different autoimmune conditions, even things like eczema, psoriasis can be because of a leaky gut. So how to figure out if you have a leaky gut is coming to see your naturopath to see what are some of those symptoms and signs to see, do you have that? And this is where, I see a lot of patients with digestive concerns, and, I give them concrete, detailed protocol, detailed plan, so that you're not doing this just blindly. You have step-by-step process to do this. Okay, so let's talk about fungal overgrowth. So like I mentioned with the leaky gut, if you have a damaged barrier, what happens is there can be these particles that travel that are products of the fungus that can go all over your body and can create a lot of inflammation. So one of the biggest fungal signs of fungus overgrowth is you can get fungal yeast infections. You can have infections in the toenails. You can have a white coating in the tongue. And you can, of course, have different other symptoms like brain fog, arthritis, joint pain, shortness of breath. And this can be because of this fungus, specific one called Candida. So you might have heard about Candida. Candida is one of those fungi that lives in the body. It tends to be, when it's under control, important and good. But when you have too much sugar, or when you have too much stress in your life, or when you have a leaky gut, it tends to take over and can be very naughty and can increase a lot of inflammation. And of course, our scalp can be a sign of a fungal overgrowth. And low stomach acid. So let's talk a little bit about some of the symptoms with low stomach acid. So of course, there could be bloating, there could be a lot of gas and burping, constipation, diarrhea, indigestion, even adrenal fatigue. Candida can be a sign of low stomach acid, heartburn, deficiency in vitamins, because you do need a certain amount of stomach acid to absorb things like vitamin B12, iron, and it can even cause you to develop acne and dry skin and dandruff. And one of the reasons this happens is because stomach acid is one of the biggest defenses our body has against harmful bacteria that we ingest. So if your stomach acid is too low, it's not able to kill off the bacteria. And a lot of us these days are taking acid blockers, or we're taking Tums. We're taking things to control this acid because of heartburn, for example. But what we're doing over time is we're actually kind of weakening the acid level so much that these bacteria, these pathogens can just pass through and cause a whole bunch of different issues downstream. So this is very important to figure out. If you, let's say, for example, if you have heartburn, if you have acid reflux, is it because of too high stomach acid, or is it because of too low stomach acid? Because both can cause heartburn. So this is where you need to, it's so much better to get a more detailed analysis of your health concerns. That way we can figure out, okay, what is really going on? And like I mentioned before, our gut is very sensitive, and when it's leaky, we can develop things like food sensitivities and histamine intolerance. So food sensitivities you can develop at any age, and for the most part, you can have a wide range of food sensitivities that you might have, and some of the signs can be as kind of make sense, like bloating, of course, food sensitivity, but it could be something like headaches too, or fatigue, or even difficulty losing weight. So all of that could be tied into food sensitivities. And this is where we can do testing to figure out what foods you might be sensitive to, so that we can avoid them, eliminate them for a little while until the gut heals. And vitamin D deficiency is a big factor for a lot of skin concerns. A lot of skin issues, hair fall can be a result of low vitamin D as well. So it's not just for bones. It's not just for immune system. There is a lot of different things that the vitamin D does. And this is where I always test to make sure that we get a baseline of what's going on and how your vitamin D levels are before we do supplementing, to make sure that we are actually going to hit those optimal vitamin D ranges for you. So another cause is deficiency in zinc. So zinc deficiency can be very common too, because a lot of the sources of zinc is nuts and seeds, shellfish, so seafood, and sometimes we don't necessarily get a lot of that in our diet. So zinc deficiency can go from many different symptoms. This is where, if you are wondering, do I have a zinc deficiency, we can test to figure out what's going on. And we can, of course, look at the symptoms and see, okay, is there a correlation too? So a lot of times, you might notice white spots in your fingernails, just low energy, trouble with sleeping, getting colds and flus often can be signs of that. Zinc as well, zinc deficiency too. And here's where I want to just make sure that you do know that if you do take too much zinc, you can cause a copper deficiency. So we want to make sure we balance both. So this is where I say, don't guess, come speak to a naturopath so that way we can figure out the exact dose for you, how much of it you need for how long, so that way you aren't necessarily overdoing something too. And so let's talk a little bit about natural ways to support dandruff and itchy scalp. And these are the things that we want to consider. So things like having an anti-inflammatory nutrition plan. So we want to cut down the pro-inflammatory foods as much as possible and add in the anti-inflammatory foods, things like leafy greens, wild-caught salmon, the grass-fed beef, olive oil, avocado oil, just like spices, things like ginger, garlic, lots of good, colorful food on your plate. And I kid you not, when you go into this diet, when you change and when you make those lifestyle changes, you do not want to go back to those processed inflammatory foods. Like, your body will literally crave healthy food. And it can be as easy as starting with switching one thing per day, one thing at a time, and then over a month or over 6 months, however long it takes, your taste buds change, and it becomes this amazing transformation in your body. So top anti-inflammatory foods, I suggest even adding one thing at a time. It can be huge and amazing for your overall long-term health. And of course, we want to try and eliminate food sensitivity. So this is where we want to first figure out what are your food sensitivities. And, and sometimes it could be as easy as making a diet diary where we write down what's going on and see if there is a correlation. So let's say you eat gluten or you have dairy. So do you experience bloating? Do you experience tiredness? And we can guess from that perspective too, or we can test first to see exactly what you might be sensitive as well. And of course, reading the labels can be very helpful. Thankfully, we live in a day and age where there are a lot of different options right now. There's a lot of gluten-free options, dairy-free options, egg-free options, and that can be so easy to adapt to in our current day and age that we live in, which is really grateful. And so what we want to do is we want to have let's say we figure out what's going on, and we want to do an elimination diet to help remove this so that our gut can heal, and then we can slowly add it back in. One of my goals is to make sure that we never restrict you too much. Like, we want you to enjoy the foods that you like, but we want to do it in a way that your gut is healed, and then you can actually enjoy these foods without having a negative side effects of that. And another one is considering low histamine diet. So this is where we want to make sure. So what is histamine? Let's talk a little bit about that. It's like this little molecule that is a green light for your immune system. So whenever it's released, it can cause anything from hives to itchiness to swelling to sometimes just gut issues, sleep issues. It can be so, it can just affect a lot of different parts of the body. And there's certain foods that can be very high in histamine. And these are things like cheeses, fermented drinks, fermented foods, more drinks, things like canned foods, meats, processed meats. Sometimes chocolate can be high in histamine as well, like foods with vinegar. So if you notice that you're getting reactions with the foods that are on this list here, things like, bloating or even itchiness in the scalp and dandruff, then this is something to keep in mind and see what's going on. And of course, don't guess. We can definitely come up with ways to manage histamine intolerance and figure out what's going on with what could be causing histamine intolerance in you as well. And these are the ways to improving your stomach acid level. So we want to make sure you have enough stomach acid so that, like I said, it can sterilize the food, it can kill the harmful pathogens, harmful bacteria, fungi, yeast, and it can help with digesting food, protein, especially. It can activate certain enzymes that help with absorbing nutrients. So we want to improve your stomach acid levels. And stomach acid actually tends to go down as we get older, just because our bodies, our ability to digest and our ability to get the nutrients just tends to decrease as we get older. So, a lot of times we actually do need support for it with digestion. So these are some of the ways that we can improve stomach acid. And this could be as easy as adapting, having some apple cider vinegar before you have a meal. Having spices like ginger can be very, very helpful for improving stomach acid levels. And when you're starting off, this can be a little daunting. So this is where I really highly recommend come speaking to with a naturopath, because that way we can let you know, you don't need to necessarily do all 10 of these. You might just need to do 2 or 3 things to just really kind of kickstart the stomach acid. One of the ones that I really like here is eating your protein first instead of eating the carbs and when you have a meal, because protein takes a little bit longer to digest. So if you have it first of all, you're going to feel more full, and your food protein will digest better. And then you might get the added benefit of like a weight loss, because you're not reaching for the carbs as much. I also love the use of ginger. I love the use of apple cider vinegar, and for using fermented vegetables, because they really help support the digestive juices in your body. And then the other one is, of course, supporting the gut microbiome. We want to make sure that we have as good of a digestion as possible. So this is one of the best ways, the 5 R's to healing gut inflammation. And sometimes this can be very overwhelming. So this is where I really recommend talking to a healthcare professional, a naturopath, for example, to really figure out the protocol for you, because you are unique, you're special, and you're unique. And not everything that might work for someone else might work for you. So you want to really tailor it to you. And the only way for us to know that is to do a thorough intake about what's going on with you. So some of the first steps is we want to remove some of the triggers, things that like inflammatory foods, bacteria that are causing infections and inflammation. And we want to replace that with a healing diet, healing supportive herbs, supportive supplements, improving your bile flow, improving your liver function. Then we want to maybe introduce probiotics, prebiotics. We might want to repair the gut and balance it with lifestyle changes, so that way it goes on for longer. So this is the process, and this can go from anywhere from 2 months to 6 months, depending on how bad your condition might be and symptoms might be. So this is where having someone in your team can be really, really helpful. And of course, we want to optimize vitamin D levels, make sure we get the right amount for you. This is where I say test, don't guess. Get the one that to figure out where you are right now, to see how far we need to do this for you. And this is something that I do as well. And we want to optimize zinc levels too. So this is where we want to first figure out how your zinc is, your levels, and then we can optimize it through diet, of course, through supplements. And figuring out what supplements to take can be tricky, because there's so many different ones out there. So this is where you can, of course, will be given all the different topics and different products, and you get the recommendation that fits you the most. And we want to also increase vitamin C and polyphenols, and vitamin C can really help with reducing inflammation in the scalp, in the whole body. It can balance your histamine. It can also heal the skin. And of course, this is one of Dr. Jocker's articles, so we want to honor, some of the products that he does have. So something like this product can be beneficial too. And so let's talk a little bit about things we can actually put on the scalp. So one of my favorite oils to use is coconut oil on the scalp, because coconut oil is moisturizing, but it also has antifungal properties. So it can balance your scalp health in a very effective way. And it can be very healing. and it is an amazing oil. One of my tips to use is actually to use it on a damp skin because it is an oil, so it traps moisture. And we want our skin to be a little bit damp first. That way, it can trap that moisture that's already on the skin. And you can do a mask with coconut oil a couple times a week, and really target the spots when you have the dandruff. Now, I would even recommend this if you have seborrheic dermatitis, which is the oilier scalp, just because the fatty acids in the coconut oil is very anti-inflammatory, so it can calm down the dermatitis. And you can, of course, another great one is olive oil. Back in the day, in the ancient times, we used olive oil, we used coconut oil, we used jojoba oil. So the natural oils really help with hair growth, hair health, and it's a great moisturizer, and it also has antifungal, anti-inflammatory properties. It's an amazing oil that you can use. And what we want to do is, if it is a little bit warmer, all these oils, it will penetrate a little bit better onto the scalp. And you want to massage it, and you can wrap your hair in a warm towel and leave it for about 20-30 minutes, and then wash it off with shampoo. And this is another great scalp mask that you can use, you can try. Now, with essential oils, I always say please do a spot test first, so that way okay, this is it's not going to give you an allergic reaction, things like that. So rosemary and tea tree oil are really great because they are anti-fungal, antimicrobial. They can kind of balance the scalp microbiome, and they're also very good for hair growth too. So this is a great hair and scalp mask recipe that you can try. There's honey in this one, which can be very nice and soothing for an irritated scalp, because sometimes the essential oils can be a little tingling. It can you can feel like there's something happening going on, so the honey can help soothe it. I would say test this first on yourself, on your let's say on your palm or on your wrist, for example, first, to see, okay, you're not having any kind of allergic reaction. So the basis of this talk is to kind of let you know that there is help. Yes, dandruff can be very, very annoying. It can be embarrassing, and sometimes you might not know what's causing it. And with this talk, I hope that you were able to find that could be some deeper imbalances that could be causing dandruff, and the flaky skin, and the irritation. And so that's why we wanted to let you know there's hope, there's help, and we can support you with natural therapies, natural strategies for this. So I hope you really enjoyed that talk. And of course, if you have any questions or any concerns, I am available at Justine Blaney Wellness Center for free meet and greets, and to kind of discuss more, because you are individual, you're unique, and your concerns might be different from someone else's. So the best way, I think, is to kind of have a one-on-one chat to see how I might be able to help you. So these are our webinars that are coming up. So we are going to actually have another talk on that same wavelength. We're going to do talk on skin rashes, which can affect more than just your skin. We're talking about whiplash. What is it? How to overcome that, and some of the daily decisions that could be draining our energy, the ways to optimize our energy levels. There's also an event happening soon, which is Dining with Doc. And then we're also going to have one on how to live your life with less stress. So please stay tuned for all of these amazing talks and events. And of course, as always, please feel free to connect with us, write us a review, or even give us feedback on any kind of topics that you might be interested that you would like us to talk. Because we want to, with these talks, we just want to give you as much information as possible so that you are living a healthy, amazing, holistic life full of energy.